Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, privyet, mabuhay, and jean dobre. It's so good to be with you all again, and I know you'll be so happy you're joining us because we have a very cool and special returning guest with us today, and that is Vicki Goodman, who is an author. And in just a moment, we're going to talk about one of her books. But before we do that, welcome again, Vicki.
Oh, thank you for having me, Samia. I'm very excited to be back.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you back. We had such a fun conversation last time on one
We
of your
did.
books. That one was related to, I mean, you wrote that book after your husband, Sam, passed away, and you were sharing some of the really important lessons that you have learned in after his passing. And that was such a meaningful conversation. And so I learned so much from you, and I'm so happy to have you back.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be back, and I'm excited to talk about the new book. So, I have to thank you.
Oh, no, tell us more. Okay, so tell us this book. It's a new book and it's on a very different topic. Tell me more about it.
Well, it's called Speed Bumps and Other Impediments to Life in the Fast Lane. And it's about the trials of life from the point of view of a type A personality. So perhaps not everyone knows what a type A personality is. Um, so it's basically your impatient, driven type of person who, if it's in a work environment, for example, the more work that comes that person's way, the faster they're going to work to keep up. Whereas the more relaxed type B personality works at one speed regardless of deadlines and urgency. And, the type A tends to be confrontational. Most people I find avoid confrontation. They're uncomfortable with it. I and a number of other type A's I know do not avoid confrontation. It's like, oh, you want to engage? Let's get to it. And so the danger there is that you need to avoid it escalating into aggression. You need to keep it in the assertiveness range. So the enemy of the type A is anything that gets in the way, any inconvenience, any obstacle to getting to the destination, whether it be a physical destination, while you're driving, or whether it just be sort of a figurative destination, meaning just a goal in life. Oh, I've got to get this done. Oh no, I can't because, the plumbing needs to be repaired or something, and I have to take care of that first. So, these things where a type B, a more relaxed person would take this in stride, the type A is, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have something I need to get done and I can't because this other thing happened. So anyway, it's kind of this type of thing that I have been an example of pretty
Mm.
much all my life. I'm not proud of it, but I know there are others out there who exhibit these same tendencies, and I wrote the book to help them, to let them know they're not alone.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some shame in some of the behaviors. Impatience is never a good thing.
Mm.
And if anything, type A's tend to be impatient, and we're not proud of it. We're sometimes ashamed of the way we behave. And so I wrote the book in order to let other type A's know that they're not alone. And also, I know that there are type B's out there. My husband Sam was a type B. He was always scratching his head over the way I was reacting to things, you know? And so the book is also for those type B's that have type A's in their lives to understand the motivations and behaviors better. So so what makes this book unique, I think, is that there's a lot of literature written on the personality types, but all of the ones I've ever seen are written from a clinical perspective by psychology professionals. I am not a psychology professional, nothing of the kind. I wrote the book purely to tell stories about my experience as a type A. So it's very relatable to
Yes.
other type A's, or again to type B's who have type A's in their lives.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show. Oh, I love that. I love that. There's something, in fact, I was just talking about this earlier with someone about the value of learning from someone who has been through whatever the challenges that you're trying to learn about and deal with in your own life. Because, theoretical knowledge is, of course, whatever you can get, it's valuable in its way. But it's like until you actually experience a certain challenge and then you go through the process of managing it, dealing with it, overcoming it, there's just things that you cannot get about it just based on theoretical, understanding or learning. And yeah, and there's just something about learning from someone who's been through what you may be currently challenged with, that is so, I mean, not only helpful, but, I was actually reflecting about the fact that um, this was like many years ago when I was back in college, and some of the very first people that I opened up to about being a survivor of child sexual abuse was other survivors. And I felt so much safer and more comfortable opening up to fellow survivors because I had been so afraid of being judged and shamed and blamed. But the that was a group of people that I felt, okay, here is someone, like if I share with them, they won't blame me, shame me, judge me, or at least they're least likely to do that. And so it was like such a healing experience for me to hear other survivors share their stories. And then when for many months, all I did was I just sat and listened to other survivors sharing their stories. And now I'm talking about having joined a club on campus that that was what it was about. It was like, it was called the Clothesline Project. And the whole project, it's about, creating space for survivors and friends and family to come and talk about issues of sexual abuse. And um, a lot of it was survivors sharing their experiences, sharing their stories, and being there for each other as peer support. We usually didn't, like sometimes they would invite in a psychologist or some other kind of professional person to give some kind of a lecture or something like that. But most of the time, the goal was let's give each other like peer support. it was like so helpful. And like for me, like I said, for the first so many months of my attending the club meetings, all I did was I listened to other survivors. I wasn't ready to share my own story, but when I started finally feeling like, okay, I want to share my story, that was like the safe container and environment that I was able to do it in.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. I think it applies to so many things that we feel shame about. And I'm sure that not all type A's feel shame. I actually think I was a pretty extreme example of this personality type. I think a lot of people have type A tendencies, but maybe not all of the ones that I have that are described in the book. So, you're going to read the book and relate to some of it and not other parts of it. But as I said, I think I was a pretty extreme example. So, I'm sure there are people out there who had a lot more self-control while they were making their way through all these stressful situations in life, than I did. But I know there are some people who aren't proud of the way they behaved in every situation, and this book is for all those people that could relate to these things. I really bared my soul in this book, not, I have to say I'm kind of proud of it because I'm not sure everyone could have been so brutally honest about the things they're most ashamed of, that they've experienced in life. And there are a lot of things I'm proud of too, and those are in the book also because type A's tend to be very productive. But and they get a lot done. And, so that there are definitely positive aspects to the type A. I think in the workplace, for example, I think team projects really benefit from participation of both type A and type B because the type Bs serve as a calming influence on the type A's. And the type A's are really good for getting the type Bs to maybe take a risk here and there. Maybe learn a little more about, you know, just tiny little bits of confrontation. And, those things are good. Getting those type Bs to expand their comfort zones a
Yeah.
little. I think type A's are naturally better at taking risks
Mhm.
and stretching their comfort zone a little bit. I never advocate, by the way, for anybody to stretch their comfort zone too much.
Mhm.
It's always got to be gradual, because it creates anxiety to stretch your comfort zone. And so, you know, I think that the gradual expansion is the best way to go because we can tolerate that level of anxiety. And then maybe later on, we'll try for the thing that was too much before.
Yeah.
And yeah, so anyway, I'm kind of all over the place here, but
No,
yeah, those things are in the book. And
make
oh,
a great
I
point.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, I know what I was going to say. So I really bared my soul in the book, and some friends of mine who read the book said, "Oh my God, I thought I knew you, but I guess I really didn't, or at least I didn't know certain things about you." We all keep things hidden, and I kind of undid that in this book.
Mm.
So yeah.
That was
So,
very brave of you for sure. And I'm
mhm.
sure lots of people will really benefit from your being so honest and so brave. The relationship between type A's and type B's, you just made me think about um, in the last year or two, I have been working with somebody who is a bit of a type A, and I'm definitely more type B personality. And it's been actually really helpful for me to be working with her.
Really, how?
Yeah. Okay, so basically, a couple of years ago, one of my uncles passed away. And then I found out, oh, that he has made me his trustee. And his trust has some like rental properties, real estate properties. And I had no experience of like managing real estate, dealing with tenants, things like that. And so luckily for me, when I stepped into the role of being trustee and starting to have to deal with all these things that were really new for me, into my life came one of the people that my uncle had worked with, and who had really helped him. Um, she's actually a realtor and a real estate investor herself, and she has like 30, 40 years of experience. She has like over 20 properties of her own that, she rents and manages and things like that. And I mean, I swear it's like all the grace of God and God putting kindness in her heart. She decided to take me under her wing. And she has been like just so helpful with guiding me through little things, big things. And one of the big things that we had to do was I realized one of the buildings that my uh, uncle had in the trust was unfortunately not doing very well financially. We were like in a going in a serious loss because of it. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I think we're gonna have to sell this place. But before we could sell it, there was like just in order for us to get the best price that we could, we were like, okay, let's fix these big glaring problems that we're having, so that it's in much better condition than, what it is now. And a lot of it had to, like, not a lot, but some of the big problems that we were dealing with were related to the tenants in the property who had basically were not taking very good care of the place. Like we had a couple of apartments in the building, or like the people were hoarders and they're like full of stuff and lack of hygiene and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And like me, I have like I'm like, okay, I don't want to judge how anyone is living, and everyone's going through their own thing. And being I do not like confrontation. I used to hate confrontation and
But he
avoid it
does.
at all costs, but I'm better at dealing with conflict now. But certainly it's not my preferred, like confrontation is not my preferred mode of relating with people. But it's been like so I was trying to go about it with my usual strategies of being very understanding and sort of gentle and stuff. And it did help. I think it was good that I was there with that approach, but it was also really good that I think of her as my mentor now, that she was there because she came in and she just put in a level of energy, and she was like, "Oh no, this is not going to fly." She took a much tougher stance, let's say, with some of the tenants, and she was like, "You gotta get this done. You have to change this. This is not acceptable, and we're going to give you 2 weeks to clean this up."
See, type A's are good for situations like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we ended up actually creating a good balance because my mentor, she actually told me, she said that she was surprised by how cooperative some of the tenants were actually being with us, because she was like, usually when she deals with people on her own, she said she tends to get in conflict with people, and with me there to calm everybody down and so forth. Actually, we ended up like we got everything done that we needed to get done. And by and large, everyone was happy that it all got done, because even the folks that we pushed to like clean up and just things like that, at the end of the the process, they were like, "Oh, I feel so much better. Oh, this, like, my place looks so amazing." And we were able to like give them various upgrades, like we were able to put in a new carpet and, do new paint on the walls and fix this and fix that. And we couldn't have done that if they hadn't first cleaned
Yeah.
up the place. And so in the end, everyone came out happy, and I was like, yeah, I definitely couldn't have managed it on my own.
You know, I just thought of an analogy that in writing this book, I never thought of it, but it was like you and your friend were the good cop and the bad cop. You were the good cop, and the type A, is always eager and willing to be the bad cop in these situations.
Well, I would like to think that we were both good, just in different ways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you got the job done because of the contributions of both of you, but it's still, the good cop, bad cop
Yeah.
um, scenario. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah. So I guess I can also tell you about um, some of the chapters in the book. For example, I start off the book with a couple of chapters about where I think my type A tendencies came from.
Yes,
Because
please.
I'm not sure they were just genetically, that I was genetically
Mm.
predisposed to be this way. I talk about how my mother, who I loved dearly, she for some reason denied me my own nature. She felt it was important for me to take on all of her opinions and judgments and tastes. And I tell a story in the book about when I was 4 years old, and my mom took me to get party shoes, and we go to this store, and there are all these girls' dressy shoes in the window. And my mom says, so look in the window before we go in the store. Which shoes do you like? And I pointed to a pair of pink patent leather Mary Janes. And she said, oh no,
Oh.
no, we're getting black because that's more versatile or practical. And she grabbed my arm and pulled me into the store. And I thought, what did I do to make her mad? Well, the upshot is that I never really expressed an opinion of my own again until I was about 40 years old.
Mm.
I always was trying to think, okay, what would mom think of this? And of course, sometimes I'd get it right and sometimes I'd get it wrong because I can't read her mind. I knew her pretty well, but yeah, so I think that I was grasping for control pretty early in life. And I think type A's tend to be control freaks,
Mm.
um, at least in certain respects. And
Yeah.
so I have some really fun chapters in here about kind of obsessive compulsive neatness. And, I tell a story about how I had a friend over, when I was maybe 7 years old, and my room was neat as a pin. Everything was exactly just so the way I wanted it to be. And so, of course, someone would come over to play and they'd see something they admired on your dresser, and they'd pick it up and, oh, that's neat, and, put it back down. And then, my dilemma was, can I leave it askew from the way I like it to be, or maybe not quite in the same place until my friend leaves, thereby preserving my reputation as a normal kid? Or will I be too anxiety ridden doing that? And will I have to pick it up and put it back the way I need it to be
Yeah.
while the friend is still there?
Mm.
So I talk about that, and then I talk about all the little, my pet peeves, and so the book is very funny in places.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
let's see.
that's such a helpful insight though, that whatever the personality types we may be now doesn't mean we were always like that, doesn't mean we always have to be like that, because a lot of the behaviors we may be engaging in are maybe things that we have learned over time because of various experiences that we have had. And so it's not just, oh, I am this way because I am this way, but it's like, oh no, I may have picked up on some of these behaviors and ways of being because this is what I experienced. And once you are able to realize some of that, then you can also be like, oh, maybe I can change. And I've experienced that actually in my life. You made me think about, I mean, if being a control freak is a is a something that type A's deal with or have. I mean, I used to be a big control freak. Uh, and like for me, I had actually a similar thing where one of the very few ways in which I felt I could have control in my life is by designating spaces that this is my space, these are my things, and I'm going to put everything exactly as I want in this space. And like for me, I didn't worry about what anyone else would think about me in terms of if they came and messed things up because for one thing, I didn't have any friends. I mean, I was very socially isolated. Like I basically couldn't make or keep friends. The only kids in my life were my brother and sister and my cousins, like family that I lived with. And they got the burnt of it. Like my little sister in particular. Oh, for her. When we were like little kids, like she would come in and she'd want to like check out one of my books or this or that. And I literally just pushed her out of my space and without any care for how that would make her feel or think I was just too obsessed with, keeping everything just as it was supposed to be,
Oh,
you know? So
yeah. Yeah, I get it, and then you feel bad about it later once you've matured and you realize what you did, but she survived it, right?
yeah, I mean, we have had quite a journey. Like I think it was in college, like she and I ended up in college together. She's 2 years younger than me. So to in some ways, I was always, ahead of her in class and school and so forth. And so we had limited interactions and opportunities to like really um, like work together or study together, things like that. But once she got up with me in college, like I was in college already, but then she came in and she got admitted into the same college. Things started to change, not only because well, there was something about the college environment where there were like all of these different opportunities. Like, for example, even though we didn't end up taking any classes together, we ended up in different clubs on campus and different organizations and projects that were happening. And we ended up both participating in some of those same clubs and projects. And so we actually got to work together in ways that we had never really done. But also it was that I couldn't just be treating her as my little sister in that environment. I had to
Yeah.
treat her as a peer fellow student. And so it sort of created some, um, I guess, like forced me to treat her in some more respectful ways.
Yeah.
But also I got to see a side of her that I was like, wow, I mean, she's really great at what she does, and she's so smart in all these different ways that I never appreciated before. And um, yeah, and I think I was also at an age where I was more open to working on myself, and I was already sort of working on like my personal growth and healing. And so things just kind of worked out where in college we were able to really improve our relationship. And when we like my improving my relationship with my sister actually became a real catalyst for my being able to improve my relationship with pretty much everyone in my family, especially. It was like really great. And certainly like in that context between me and my sister, like she was the one who was more calm and grounded and reasonable and helpful and peaceful. And I used to be the one who was more dysregulated, definitely the control freak in that at that time and so forth. And now we are a lot more similar, actually. Just the other day, one of my cousins was remarking we had not met for many years because she lives in a different state from us. But we went to attend a family wedding. And she was like, oh, I never realized how similar you and your sister were. Like, yeah, it's true. We are now. We weren't always.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Well, um, I don't know. Samia, do you have any questions for me about this? I mean, one thing I can say about what you were talking about is, when type A's are kind of forced into a teamwork situation, let's say at work,
yeah.
they don't like that too much because being so controlling,
Yeah.
they want to control how everything turns out
Mm,
with a project or whatever it is that you're teaming up on. And so if you're forced to relinquish some of that control because it's not just you, you've got other people, that's hard for the type A. It's also hard for them to delegate
mm,
um, tasks if they don't have utter confidence that the person they're delegating it to is going to do it with the same exact, perfection and astronomical high quality that they would have done it themselves. Type A's are kind of all about if it's to be, it's up to me.
uh-huh.
So yeah, that's kind of another thing. The last chapter in the book is kind of appalling in its title. I called it Road Rage 101.
Ah,
But I define road rage a little differently than we're used to thinking about it. This is more about the impatience of driving, not threatening other drivers or, pointing a gun at them or getting out and, wanting to have fisticuffs with them. Nothing like that. I'm just talking about, once again, the type A is presented with obstacles while trying to get to a goal, or in this case, a destination. And, obstacles show up, especially in the big cities, in a million different ways. It can be road construction. It can be just, traffic, rush hour traffic. It can be a piece of furniture in lanes that fell off a pickup truck or, whatever. There's all kinds of things. And this stuff drives a type A crazy. We don't want the obstacles. We don't want anything delaying us or inconveniencing us or forcing us to get to our destination later than expected. So it's kind of a funny chapter, I know people have laughed while reading it, and so I wrote that one too.
yeah.
And it's just all of these different aspects of a type A. I even wrote a chapter about how a type A might engage in fun. I mean, we're talking about a pretty wrought up character here, that you would imagine can't have fun. Well, the perfectionism and the drive, kick in. And so I wrote this chapter about, it's called O'Lally Berry Madness, when another type A friend of mine and my poor husband, Sam, we weren't married yet. The three of us go in search of, O'Lally berry pie at 4 different establishments. I know nobody knows what an O'Lally berry is. It's a blackberry that's It's the best blackberry because they're both tart and sweet. They're delicious, and
Oh,
you make a fresh pie out of them. So there were in Long Beach, California, where we lived in this neighborhood, there were 4 different places that in June would make a lallyberry pies, and everybody went nuts over them. They were so delicious. So we decided, we would make a contest out of it, see if we could get, pies from every one of those establishments, come home, taste them all, and see which one was the best. And then there's another part of the chapter about the spelling of Olalieberry and, the parentage of the Olalieberry, what berries were combined to make it. And, it's a really fun chapter too. So, but my husband, Sam, didn't know why my type A friend and I were so intent upon getting 4 pies so that we could taste them all. He says, at one point, I had to talk the manager into one of the establishments into making a pie because they were about to close and they were all out.
oh,
And so I told him the story about how we needed a pie from, their restaurant that night, in order to accomplish our goal. And, Sam's just thinking, what is this? We have plenty of pie to enjoy. He didn't get it, because he's a type B. So my friend David and I, we had to have pie from all 4 places. So you know, how a type A might engage in fun. A
yeah.
little quirky, but there you have it.
Hey, I can appreciate that way of having fun too. But tell me a little bit more, Vicky, about some of the solutions that you have found, or how you've managed the sort of the challenging aspects of the type A personality, because now you're a lot more calm and relaxed, and you have learned how to deal with some of those more challenging aspects of being a type A. Tell me a little bit more about some of the lessons you have learned and how any of our listeners who may be struggling with these issues, how they can help themselves or their loved one.
I am so glad you asked this question, and I can only take maybe 20% credit for the fact that I am a lot more relaxed now. In other words, I happened upon the solution. And
Oh.
what it was when we were tired and Sam and I decided we would move from California to the mountains of central Arizona, small town life. Suddenly I noticed it was a lot easier for me to stay calm. And the reason was because when I was in California, Los Angeles area, traffic all over the place, um, stress at work, there wasn't enough downtime
Mhm.
between stressful situations for me to come down from one before the next one happened. Once I got here, there were stressful things that happened every once in a while, but the difference was the stresses were so much fewer and farther between that it wasn't just, the volcano named Vicki just kind of building to eruption. I would come down from, the little annoyance or irritation or whatever it was, or inconvenience before, well before the next one would happen. So I wasn't building. I was just kind of going, just up and down, up and down, up and down a little bit, and never, going to the heights of my irritation and anger.
Mm.
And so, yes, I've done part of it myself, but because I've noticed there are a lot of people up in this small town of mine who drive like maniacs. I don't do it. I'm not one of them anymore. Even though I think, and I'm very ashamed of this, I think that I was one of the ones who invented inpatient driving, because
Oh.
I was doing it before road rage, before the term road rage was even coined. There was no name for it. You were just sort of the aggressive driver who was the empress of the avenue. You were the one who controlled everything. And I don't do that anymore. So that part I take responsibility for. But really, the lesson was the first thing. And that, I mean, if I had known that it would take moving to a less stressful environment in order to conquer this type A craziness, I might have, talked to Sam about moving away from,
Mm.
the more stressful environs earlier than we did.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, that's true in so many situations where people are struggling for change, that the environment that they're in is actually part of what is creating some aspects of the challenge and preventing effective or easy solutions. And so oftentimes changing your environment um, becomes a very important part of how you can make change more fun and easy, you know? I mean, it's not impossible to create change in a challenging environment, but it's certainly more
Easy.
stressful. It's certainly
Yeah.
more challenging than if you have a more helpful and supportive environment. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, even like in the context of like dealing with my trauma, that was true. Like I had to like literally like when my environments changed, and in my case also, it was like an accident of nature. I mean, not an accident, but like it wasn't something that I chose to do, but it happened to me in the sense that my family, my parents made a decision to move us. And so we literally, like at America, like now I'm living in Los Angeles in America, and this is the fourth country that I've lived in or that I'm now living in. I've lived in India, I've lived in Pakistan, I've lived in the Middle East, and now here we are in America. And every single time that we moved countries, it was like a big change in my environment. And now, especially now when I look back at it, I can literally track like different breakthroughs that I had in my life and in
Interesting.
my healing journey that that relate to the changes in the environment that I experienced. And I don't know how else those changes might have occurred in my life without the change of environment. You know, like I mentioned, college being such a transformational experience for me. And so like for me, it was like I was right at around college age when my family, we moved to America. And so, like not only was I in a different country, but like I was in an American college, an American educational college environment. Like, first of all, if I had been back in Pakistan or India, I don't know if I could have even afforded to go to college. So that's one thing. But even if I had been in college back there, the environment over there is so different. There isn't, for example, like the clothesline project, the club that I joined on campus, there's no way such a thing existed in colleges. I mean, I hope it's something like that might exist now, but certainly like 20, 25 years ago, no, because in our Indian Pakistani culture at that time, it was such a big taboo to talk about these issues, to talk about being a survivor of child sexual abuse. It was like, no way. It would not have been tolerated or allowed,
Yeah,
and
very different. Yeah.
I literally had to be in this American environment to be able to experience that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I you almost make me wonder with your stories that you just told, what it would have been like if I had lived in more places. I think God presents us all with different changes in life.
Mm,
And, we are to learn from all of those circumstances. And with yours, it was moving around among different cultures, and I did want to say something about the type B. I was talking before about how moving to a less stressful place made such a difference for me. I'm not proud of that. I wish I could have done it on my own, but I just didn't have what it took to make that change on my own. See how honest I'm being? But a type B, one of the really admirable traits of the type B personality, of the ones I've known anyway, like Sam, my husband, is that they can exist in any degree of stressful situation and not be overwhelmed by it.
mm,
They just, it is their nature to peaceably exist no matter what pressures, stresses are being placed on them.
mm,
And there's some envy there. I would like to be more like that. On the other hand, what I have achieved, all I've achieved, what I have so far written 2 books, what I have done so many of the things. I really pushed myself to be successful in my career. And I was, but there were a lot of people who could have done the same who didn't. They didn't care as much. They weren't as driven. So, it's a trade-off.
mm.
I've accomplished a lot, but was it worth it? I don't know. It's my life, I own it.
Yes, yes. No, you know what? Whatever led you to where you are, I'm so glad that it all happened because it brought you to me and we got this chance to connect and I get this chance to learn from you and have this opportunity to share your wisdom with my community of people. And I'm sure so many of them will benefit also. And I'm sure who's been listening or watching, uh, I'm sure they've been really enjoying our conversation. And I'm sure they'll be wanting to get more in touch with you and learn more with you and from you. So do you have any words to share with us about how people can best connect with you?
Yes, thank you, Samia. Uh, they can go to my website, which is Vicki, Vicki, Paris Goodman, Paris like the city in France, VickiParisGoodman.com. And there they will find some podcast interviews, and the books are discounted. Both of my books are discounted on that site. There's some blog articles that are pretty interesting, and I'll be adding to those soon. So, it's all good. Oh, and there's a contact form. If anyone would like to contact me, I would love to hear from you. So, yeah.
Yay, that's awesome. Thank you, Vicky. And for my last reminder to our audience is to please make sure you check the show notes because you'll be sure to drop Vicky's links in there so you can connect with her and you'll be reaching the right Vicky and just yeah, connect with her and continue to learn with her and get the help and support you need whenever you're ready for it. And until we connect next time, I just wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.